What's up, brother?
What's up?
Man, good to see you. Good to connect with you. Always love catching up. Always love chopping it up, and we got a lot to dive into.
Man, how long is this podcast?
As long as we want it to be.
Sweet.
I love it, man. So what's going on? I always just interested to hear navigating, just navigating the market, navigating just tough times. I mean, shit. I mean, it feels like it's been a battle.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you knew in 22 when I think we had the organization up to over 50 people when you count agents and VAs and all that. And now between 22 and 25, I've reinvented my business, reinvented the team, reinvented partnerships, all the above. Dang near went bankrupt during the process, and that still could happen, but I think we're on the other end of it. So it's been quite a journey, man. I've learned a lot about what not to do, but it has been cool to rebuild it too, because when you've been through the fire a couple times, over the past 10 years or so, generally speaking, hopefully you can rebuild it a little better. So that's kind of where we are right now. So.
Looking back, I mean, if we could, knowing what we know now, going back to 22, you look at the lessons, how would we have navigated the waters a little bit different?
I think we most likely would have just stayed a little more lean and mean and kind of kept everything abreast. And a lot of the things that, especially that you coached as far as tracking and everything, our mistake wasn't scaling up when we were scaling big, doing the cash offers and doing all the other things. We scaled up really good. And I think we did 205 units in 6 months. So, which was pretty cool, man. And it was cool to be able to be coached by your organization and be able to have the knowledge to do that. But where we made the mistake was when the frenzy stopped and the buying stopped, we didn't do like water, like Bruce Lee says, and flow like water and just start backing up. We kind of held on and clutched the opportunity that had already went away. And in doing so, we didn't scale back as far as staff, employees, all those things, nor did we do a really good job of shifting and finding what the next opportunity was. Now, given the past couple of years statistically have been pretty down across the country as far as sales. And I know there's some hot pockets, but just overall, but we didn't make the adjustments to scale back and repoint our ship to where the opportunities actually were and tried to grasp onto that old opportunity. And so we put 6 to 8 months, we held on and just bleeding like crazy until you got to a point in the business where you didn't have options for a change. It was a forced type thing. So that's what I do different is scale back really quick. So.
We've all been there, right? Is it just a human nature thing to we'll just hold in here. It's going to come back. Like what indicators did we miss to be like, hey, the train's over. We gotta shift, and we gotta shift now.
Well, I think it's more about understanding the economics of it, because the folks that were doing all the buying and the folks that we were partnering with were continuing to tell us, keep everything in staff. We're going to go again. But understand the dynamics of why they were buying and what they were buying, and understand the economics that could change that, and watching the economics versus what somebody that's maybe in a mid-level position is telling us would be a smarter move. And that goes into play with anything is a lot of what I learned was studying bond markets, studying rates, studying labor markets, studying the real big indicators that push business on the front end that allow you to see what's going to happen on the back end. And for us, we just took somebody's word for it that wasn't telling us wrong on purpose. They just didn't know. Versus really understanding the economics and what was truly happening in the real estate market and be able to make adjustments on that versus a one-off. So.
Right. So staying lean, making the adjustments, pivoting faster. And I know, part of your overall vision is getting down to the water. So going into, the market, how far is, the other market for you from where you're at in Bama?
It's right at 4 hours. So.
Okay. Yeah. So 4 hours down there, man, polar opposite market.
It is. So I was running comps this morning, and I do what's called review previews at the beginning of every week, which is just a video to review what happened, preview what's coming for each listing. I'm carrying listings in Birmingham and in Northwest Florida. And so when I pull stats for Birmingham, all the inventory showing 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, that type stuff. So it's pretty easy to build a strategy off of that. But
Yeah.
in Florida, it's a little bit different. I think you and I were talking earlier, and I think, we've got 13 or 14 months of inventory in Florida as a state right now is carrying more inventory than they've carried even all the way back to like 2012 and 13 when we were really high. And we had a ton of money flying there. A lot of it was paycheck protection money. A lot of it was migratory, tons of different things. But a lot of them bought homes on adjustable rate mortgages. And when those
Mhm.
mortgages adjusted, some of them were depending on rental income and some other things to prop those things up. And those all went in the red. So you see a rush of inventory on the beach, and then off the beach, if you get, a county or so back, then you get into industry and ports and things like that, and your inventory drops down to 5 or 6 months of inventory. It's kind of normalized. So it's interesting to see all the different dynamics as you run through different markets for sure. So
Are we starting to see prices adjust? I saw a report. I can't remember where it was from, but top 30 markets in the country as far as price adjustments, where they were going, and I don't know if it was over the last 12 months or whatever it was, but a majority of the markets, nobody was double digits, but majority of the top markets were Florida and then some in Texas. I
mhm.
mean, how much are you seeing prices? I mean, you're at 13 months inventory and price correction moving the other way.
Well, I've got a good example. We did one at 535, and that was that we listed, and that was back in September of this year. It was one of the first ones we took down there, and that was right when everybody still has that 2022 kind of mentality with sellers, and that was when inventory was starting to climb. And at 535, we got two showings over 3 months. We resharpened our pencil, and during that whole time, we saw a correction, and then we went back on. And it looks like we're going to go around 490. So that was 40,000 on 500,000. So you're looking at 8, 9, 10% price correction that's kind of happening in there. So I don't think it's like a massive 20% crash, but I'm seeing a good average 5 to 8% price correction, and the percentage of properties that are getting a price adjustment after going on the market is up in the 40s, like 42, 43%. So you're having a lot of people realize that where they think they are, they're not getting traction. So
Trying to base it off of historical instead of, like you said, bringing something on and looking at kind of competition and what you're competing against has to be factored in. And that was the whole thing why, we really led with kind of the headline, the death of the CMA, because you have to factor in all of the things around you other than just, the historical side of things.
yeah, and that's been interesting to me. It was almost not relearning. Well, I guess it was relearning the job, just to be able to have those conversations and articulate what's actually happening. And right now, if you're selling in any market, pretty much you gotta be able to talk well beyond what your neighbor's house sold for, and really really understand economics. Which I think that's where most agents need to be anyway. Man, I saw a crazy stat that like 70% of agents last year didn't sell a house or something crazy like that. And those numbers are always skewed depending on who's writing the
Sure.
article and what sampling they pull from. But I think the biggest thing that's showing up and why you have those big numbers is now these communications that are in living rooms have a lot to do with being able to articulate that you're going through a price correction, even though you're not seeing it on the news and you're not seeing it, and your neighbor's still talking about his house that had 8 offers. You got to look inside the data and really understand how to point to those things and point to indicators that aren't necessarily sold prices that'll lead you to where you need to be to get them sold.
So important. And then obviously everything also into consideration what the seller's objective is. What is the goal? What are they trying to accomplish? And I mean, when you get to that point, man, you gotta, and it's one of the things kind of been looking at over the last couple of years, just been saying, it's like, man, like, don't waste time on people that want to. You got to go find the people that have to. Where is the motivated opportunities at?
And I've made those mistakes in Florida. I've actually removed, I've taken 7 or 8 listings, but I've dropped 3 of them. And it was very well that mentality of let me go just get what I can get right now because business is slim, so just having something to hope for and something to get, and I don't mean we're not selling houses, but numbers are down, so
Yeah.
anytime you get an opportunity to get something out there that you have a chance to sell, your mind wants to go to just get it, man, just get the deal and you'll figure it out. And that is not a winning strategy right now, because if they're not, I've got to move, I'm getting divorced, somebody died, my job changed, the 3Ds, all those good things. If those aren't happening, most of the time they're not willing to go where they need to go to move a house.
Right.
And the guy the listing that I told you about, the conversation that we had where I finally got him to say, hey, you've got to come here, this is what's happening. I was like, look, man, you're liquid in this house. If you're liquid in this house, would you rather continue to pay taxes, insurance, and utilities, or would you rather move it $35,000, take that $500,000 and go ahead and go earn 5 or 6% on it and let it pay you? Within 6 months to a year, we're home anyway. And so it's kind of those type conversations that'll help lead you a little bit further. And some people aren't ready for it. You're absolutely right. So
Yeah. Well, some people aren't ready for that in being able to get to the point, but I think that's going to be the difference in, even in the industry, the real estate agent industry as a whole. If you're not educated and being willing to have those type of conversations, it's going to be real hard for you to be able to survive. You're going to be one of those agents that aren't selling very many houses per year. And but to me, that's what it takes, right? To be able to make it through kind of the storm and the season of the industry, is that you've got to be the one that needs to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. I was listening, man, I've really been spending a lot of time listening PBD podcast. I just love how, that's my news. That's how I stay in tune to what's going on. I got his daily update from Valuetainment, vtnews.ai. And it sends me just the stuff that I'm interested in, that I need to be paying attention to on a daily basis, so I don't get caught up in all the noise. But he had a really good story that he was talking about on the last podcast at the end of last week, and he was just having a conversation with his son. He's got 2 boys. One of them is super competitive. One's going to be in politics. One wants to, professional soccer, on the sports sides. And they were having a conversation talking about advice, and, the advice that you get from most people. And he called it, the 20% advice, right? To be, the advice that you get to be the top 20% at whatever it is that you're trying to do. But if you want to be at the top 1% of whatever it is that you want to do, that's a different kind of advice. But now if you want to be the 0.1% of whatever it is you do, that's a completely different type of advice. And he was just going on, and he was like, the advice most people want is that 20% advice. They want, oh man, you just hard work, you show up every day, you can do it, you can be whatever you want, you just go get it, right? That type of advice. And he said, now you get into that 1% advice, or that 0.1% of advice. And that's when people are going to tell you, like, listen, you ain't got this, you ain't got this, you ain't got this. That ain't possible. Don't do that. This is how you're built. You need to focus on that, right? Telling them exactly what they need to hear. And I just think agents going into the market, that's the type of advice that they've got to be able to give, is they got to be able to tell these clients, these buyers and sellers, especially in a market of when you have to, man, just being able to shoot them as real as possible.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, I make some pretty simple Facebook posts with kind of basic, knowledge of real estate and stuff like that. And I have a lot of agents like, this is great. This is great. And I think in the back of my mind, it surprises me that you guys aren't studying that more, because it really helps you with every conversation. I made a post the other day and I ruffled a few feathers. Imagine that.
Imagine that. I can always count on you ruffling some feathers. I laugh.
Well, and my post was basically predicated on just saying, hey, a lot of real estate agents are more worried about, and all what they put out is look at me and the glam shots and all this other stuff, which what created that was that the 2019 to 2022 market, where everything was selling really fast. And then you had AI kind of enter the picture, social media influencers, all that stuff. And so agents didn't find it real hard to sell real estate. So they figured out how to look awesome on social media. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, now it's real important that you know how to sell real estate. And it's really important that you put out things that actually add value and help folks versus just what you look like,
Right.
or and I think that's the order of the day. Really, is to really, you got to know the game, man, and you got to know your nut as far as, you know, how to advise them, what direction it's going, where their buyers are coming from, how you're going to attack that, what they can expect. You really got to talk to them and help them from couch to couch. And like I said, it doesn't have a ton to do with what the neighbor's house sold for in a volatile market. And if you don't understand the economic side of it and the strategy side of it and know your market really well, in this phase, which is not the new AI and every house is selling in 2 seconds phase, those things are going to come back to the top, and I think you're going to see a lot of the influencers and a lot of the voices in real estate move back a lot more to strategy and quality versus clicks. So
Yeah. Yeah. What besides, the economics side of it, besides the MLS, like what are you paying attention to stay sharp, to be able to stay on top of real-time data, real-time information?
I really try to pay attention to what's causing money to move and where it's coming from.
Mhm.
And I think that helps, and it's fun to do it in two different markets because, an example in
I
Florida
love
is
that. Mhm.
most everybody I talk to in Florida, they own 3 or 4 houses. They don't live there. All they care about is cap rates, economics. What are my cash on cash returns? Those type conversations on the beach. Then you move 2 miles or 3 miles off the beach, and you're having your standard living room conversations. But you want to understand where the money's coming from. So an example in the Florida market would be they just expanded their port in Panama City. They just opened up. They just dropped an article in Forbes that said because of the new infrastructure with the airport, which I think you've flown into, and the port expansion, and they've brought a lot of highway infrastructure and those things in. It's slated to be one of the top 5 mid-tier growth cities. Well, in doing so, that also spurred a shipyard that just did an $8 billion contract with the government to build ships in our market. So in the section that happened, the 12 months of inventory got reduced to 3 months of inventory within a matter of 30 days. Similar in Birmingham is when you're in a tight economy. Birmingham is very medical based, and then the state itself has a lot of auto industry and stuff like that. So figuring out who's moving in, who's moving out, where that money's coming from, and I even look at stats about what different states the money's coming from, depending on what market I'm in, and so I can target my advertising to that. So I think the biggest thing is really understanding how money flows, where it flows from, and who's bringing it into your city. And then when you craft a marketing plan, that's what you go after. And oftentimes that's going to produce more fruit than just a buyer for your client if you're hitting on somebody that's bringing in a certain amount of volume or a certain area that's bringing in a certain amount of volume. An example in Panama City is the number one feeder of Panama City right now is Nashville. So when we're running pay ads, we do a lot of ads in Nashville. Just because there's a decent migratory and a decent investment home purchase coming from that area. So some of those things are
How are you juggling that? I mean, how are you getting that data in a way to where you don't consume your whole time, just studying data and searching for it, using AI, using a lot of tools, you doing a lot of research to help you there?
Yeah, I do. I use a company called List Track just to understand the overall dynamics, and they'll tell me where all my clicks and traffic are coming from, and they give me market stats beyond just my listings. And then with the group that we're in with Place, they've got some pretty extensive systems like Land Voice and some other companies they bought where we can do a lot of cross referencing and a lot of things like that to, number one, get the data that we need and get the contacts we need. And then number two, get after it. So it's just different systems. Area Pro, Land Voice. Those are two that really, and List Track. Those are three that really help me kind of paint the picture. So
yeah, because like for you, I mean, like you said, you got the Bama market, which very, very well, and then you go into Florida and where you're at down there. I mean, it's essentially two different markets within a market, right? Because if you're talking waterfront, like you said, it's a completely different clientele, it's a completely different conversation. You get a little bit off. Okay, well, I'm used to this conversation. That's a Bama conversation. I can have this one. So how do you, in just even from a leadership perspective and mentoring and leading other agents to know, when to lean into what matters the most to that particular clientele? Is it something you just kind of, know, or you start asking some questions and they open up and like, man, dude, I don't care about that. I just want to know this. And then you got to be able to rifle it back to them. I mean, is that just through experience and just all the conversations you've had to know how to navigate those type of conversations?
Yeah, I think it's experience, but I think the biggest thing, and what we coach agents on is do a lot less talking and a lot more listening. And then the more they tell you, the more questions you ask. And it's so important to get to even, a very personal level with folks. If you're talking about somebody that's death, divorce, job change, then it's very important to get to a level to where you truly can impact their lives and help them, because most likely it's a big type move, and so you've got to understand enough to be able to understand the conversation you're going to have with that. And that's a long, drawn out questions, really deep interpersonal conversation that'll get you there. As far as these investors and folks that have beachfront property, man, they're quick and to the point. Do you know how to do 1031 exchanges? Do you understand returns? Do you understand cash on cash? If I tell you to go find me something, are you going to give me something that falls within the buy box of what I want? Or are you just going to waste my time? And they weed through you really quick, because there's a lot of agents down there, and a lot of them don't understand that language. So when you're making those calls to those bigger clientele, it's boom, 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 and they'll talk to you for about 45 seconds and know if you're qualified enough to help them with their goals. And everybody has different
Sure.
gifts. So I'm not knocking anybody. It's just different clientele. And so, once you get to that first 45 seconds, you can start going deep and talking about money, talking about returns. And then, that the beauty of that one is you open up conversations about 3, 4, and 5 properties. So that's a lot of fun for me. And how I manage being able to run between these two markets is, like I said before, most of the folks that I talk to down there, the average sales price down there is over 900,000. And there's houses that go all the way up to 20, 25 million. On that little, there's one little stretch there that pulls some pretty decent numbers. So, it's just being able to have those conversations and get to that point quick, so they know you're qualified, and then you can expand it out into network and relationship, and then start adding value. So just understanding what value they need,
Mhm.
and then making sure to hit it. So, but it's definitely a lot different. So
How are you? Because with the emergence of all the cloud-based brokerages, typically one cap sell all over the planet, wherever those companies are operating. Um, how are you navigating multiple markets, right? Being able to, because just you're in Bama, you're going down to Florida, after this, you'll be there for, 4 or 5 days. You still got business in Bama. Like, how are you juggling to be able to proactively manage both markets and deal with clientele even when you're not there?
leverage. I've got showing assistants, and I've got folks that do open houses, and it's kind of a blessing for me, because I tell the team, my listings are your listing, my business is your business. If you want to unbrand me and say it's yours, that's fine with me. So I really try to take every piece of business I do, leverage the team, help them, click a little 10% here or there for a showing assistant, help them with their marketing, all the other stuff. So when I'm able to leverage the teammates for when I'm not there, and leverage them for marketing and everything else, and it's a, benefit to the clients and to us. And it's
Mhm.
just, so it's basically like double exposure, and a lot more boots on the ground. So that's the main thing, is just leveraging teammates and making sure that while I can't be in all places at one time, making sure I have the people that are dependable that are.
They can be there and show up for you. Yeah, no, I really believe we're going to start to see more and more and more of it. Obviously spending time up in, the Northwest in the winter, like, get the Northeast in the winter, get me the heck up. Like, I need some warm weather.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel the same way now that they know, like I remember telling Gogo when she was still living in Michigan, I was like, you're not a tree, right? Like, you can really plant roots wherever you want. Just because you're here doesn't mean you have to be here. And it was a light bulb moment for her. And within however many months, she was, they were in Florida. So
Mhm.
being able to be able to have that, I think we're going to see more and more of it, of how to navigate it the right way. I mean, how much do the consumers care at the end of the day? I mean, once you have that conversation, and they know that, you know, what you're saying, they're pretty much on board for whatever.
And I'll try to, and I'll tell them up front. I don't hide. I'm like, hey, I run 2 markets. This is what you're going to see. While I'm always your main point of contact, and if you need me 10 times a day, call me 10 times a day, you'll get me. But just know that there'll be people behind the scenes. You have a whole team working for you.
I love that.
And I hit that up front, and then when they see somebody, a new face or a new thing, they're just like, oh, it's part of the team. I got a whole team. I got a whole crew doing my thing.
Yeah.
So I just try to make sure to relay that up front, and it's rare that I get any exception to that.
When you were saying about the market on the water in Florida, where do agents miss the mark? I mean, where do you know? I mean, because I know you can come in. I mean, you're skilled. Assassin on the phones. Conversation. You can pick up expireds. You can pick up properties that don't sell. Where are agents, especially on the higher clientele on the water? Where are they missing the mark? How are they not able to? One, how did they get the listing? And two, how are not being able to sell it?
I think it's just not really having the skills and training and understanding of how to do it, and not wanting to put the time and work in to do it. And then if you don't list multi-million dollar properties, or you hadn't had that experience, I mean, it takes some courage just to pick up the phone. And so, I was having a conversation with the team this morning, and I told them, I'm like, look, guys, if you want to collapse time, we always say collapse time. Number one is obviously coaching, but number two, the fastest way to get deals is to just pick up the phone. And you're going to be horrible at it when you first pick up the phone, but you're going to get better over time. Over time, the more and more you do it. But what I really recommend you do to collapse time is, before you make dials, don't just do it to check off a list. Add quality. Spend 20 minutes understanding how to talk about the framework. First of all, sit down and know what clientele you're going to call. Don't just call a $2 million house and then a $200,000 house. Have a game plan. Spend 20 minutes before you sit down. And the first time you hear a nugget that you think is going to move the business forward in that segment you want, put it in play. Make some calls. See what that does. If that doesn't work, continue studying, add some more, and continue to build on it. And I think, all those things that I just told you don't happen in one day, and they don't happen in one phone call. They happen over a period of a month or two. And it's really hard to get agents to be consistent enough to, number one, do the studying and the homework to get to understand it, but to have the courage to know that you're going to make a call and you're probably going to get asked a question you don't know the answer to. And then they're kind of just stuck. So they just end up going nowhere. So I don't think it's a lack of ability. I just think it's more of a fear factor than anything. So
yeah, it is. It's wild. And I mean, you start, once you do have those conversations, you're like, oh, this is a normal dude here.
yeah.
They're just another human being. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just having a conversation, and especially the higher, and just to me, it's the same, right? Because real estate is a high ticket item, and you look at, the only thing you're clicking and buying is not a high ticket item, right? You're going to have a conversation when it comes down to a high ticket item. And so everything has to lead to a conversation in real estate. So what are you doing to have a conversation? I mean, if you're going to have a conversation on a $200,000 home or a $2 million home, you still got to have a conversation. So just being able to be able to go through that and know you're just dealing with another human being on the other end of the line was always that way for me, right? Like, talking to a new agent getting into the industry, or talking to Jack and Michael Perry, right? Run the largest team at Real. Like, text Jack, we message back and forth on Instagram all the time. It's just, he's another dude, right? And I think that's once you realize that, you're like, and then you have a few of those conversations, you build that confidence.
It is. And then the knowledge base too. And you put all that stuff together, and at some point you'll find the sweet spot, and then, you get one or two under your belt, and then you're off to the races. But it's just start.
Yeah.
and know you're going to get told no and get kicked out. My goal, we've got 100,000 people in our database. My goal is to get it to 30,000. Why? Because I want 70,000 of them to tell me to kiss off,
here,
and the other 30,000 are my fans. I'll deal with the fans,
Yeah, that's it.
So.
I want to deal with my people, right? The people that I can relate with. That I think the biggest thing for me was always, I want to deal with people that see value in what we do. That's one type of people I want to work with, right? They see value in what we do. They believe we can help them. Obviously, the marketing and things that we're providing to them. Okay. And then I want to deal with those people.
Yeah. And not everybody's you're not gonna be able to get everybody to see it the way you see it.
Mm-mm.
And I think if you absorb that defeat, it makes it really harder. And honestly, you're gonna have more defeats than wins, no matter how good you are. But I think being able to accept that you're not just looking for a client, you're looking for the right client is really a big move, and it'll allow you to kind of release a little bit of that angst that comes with the ones that aren't right. So
yeah. So Gene, we talked a little bit about, obviously if we, had the magic wand and kind of go back and knowing what we know, what we would have changed looking forward, or even, over the last 6-12 months, the decisions you've made to navigate the business, navigate the company, navigate yourself, navigate, the family. Like, I'm just curious how you're looking in kind of the decision filters that you have in place for now and into the future.
Um, well, right now I'm trying to build the team as big as I can, um, and create. And I'm on a 5-year plan. And we joined a group called Place. And after 5 years, you can actually sell your business to Place and or put somebody else in. And so for us, every month, we're hammering on KPIs, hammering on numbers, hammering on what we need to be able to get there. And it has a lot to do with recruiting. And obviously, recruiting and sales are what it is. But I think we're a lot more measured on what's causing those things, um, what efforts we're putting in, what's returning fruit and what's not. And honestly, with our cash so tight and our position so tight right now, we don't have a lot of room for error. So having that support to really be able to you know, look under the hood and know what needs to be tweaked is really helping. But it's at one of those critical times where if I'm, in the past in 22, if I made a $30,000 mistake, no big deal. I don't have that option right now. So for me, it's what's the time in, what's the investment, what's the back end, and what are the pitfalls in between. Um, and so we're not as quick. We make decisions fast, but not like we used to. Just because we're a bit more measured in what we do, and we make sure it aligns with the KPIs that we have versus a bolt on, so to speak. So,
What value did you see in bringing in, a partner? Essentially, that's what Place is a partner for you,
mhm,
50-50.
mhm.
What hole did you see what problem did you see that, man, I believe they can help me solve this?
I think it's running a 10-unit team. I don't need Place. A 10-person team. I don't need Place, which is what we are right now. Running a 50-person team, I do need Place. So it was more of a where I want to go and what I want to build it up to, and what opportunities it can produce for me if I build it up the right way, and then I can execute some of those sales opportunities and some of those things in the near future, or I say a 5-year future. So it was really more of, like for instance, right now I can handle coaching my agents one-on-one. If I have 25 agents, there's not enough hours in the day for me to do that. So number one is being able to grow into what I want to grow into, and I try to stay a couple steps ahead. Number two is they're buying up companies, and I've engaged in that. We now have a mortgage branch, and so we've got 5 or 6 loans going
Ongoing.
right now
Yeah.
in Alabama and Florida, and I'm a licensed loan officer. I'm actually doing the whole thing. It's actually kind of fun. I'm kind of a data nerd, so it's fun. But it's being able to add a few extra layers of income without hitting the cash, and then being able to see all the coaching and all the things that they provide for my team that takes the lift off me when we get bigger. So I guess that would be the answer. Is right now it's good value, but most of the coaching and a lot of things that we're going through is I know, man. I've been coached by one of the best, which is you for a while. So it's not something I've heard, but it does get rid of a lot of that time and that headache of not headache, but just a lot of that time that it takes to do the one-on-ones and all those other things, because they do a lot of that lifting for you. So I'm more of a CEO than just a coach, is I guess
Yeah.
the best way to put it.
I do. I agree with you. You're so spot on, right? You don't need them if you want to stay lean and mean.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense. It makes sense when you grow it to really take advantage of, the additional resources. I mean, you don't need somebody riding your ass every day. I mean, we need accountability, but when they're riding it, when you're lean and mean, it's different than riding me when we've got 50 or 60 and you're pulling your weight, helping me with onboarding, helping me with offboarding, helping me with accountability, helping me with, making sure agents are staying plugged in production. And there's definitely a lot of value there. But I do, you look at, there's only a handful of ways to grow any business. And one of them is increase the transaction, value.
Mhm.
Obviously, strategically, you going into Florida, looking at higher end, getting out of the Bama market. And the same thing with us, right? We got out of Lawton, our average sales price 120 versus when we were in North DFW. I mean, it was only 283 during
Mhm.
that run. That was our average. But I mean, that was double for us where we came from. Like we were we were loving it, right? And I mean, obviously now if we would have, hung in there, talked with Alex on Friday, and I said, So what's your average sales price up to, brother? He said, about 850. I was like, God dang. I said, you come a long ways. He's from Connecticut. He's like, yeah, I come a long ways. About 115. And I was like, yeah, you come a long ways.
You even threw in the Connecticut accent.
Yeah. So strategically, it's good, obviously to position whatever price points, but you're expanding your transaction value by being able to align with mortgage. I mean, it's just, I'm seeing it more and more and more, just with the opportunity. It makes a lot of sense to be able to do it. And I know how Ben and they've structured it, and with Envoy, good product, good move, good service to be able to align. So, I mean, I love that move. Speaking of leadership and moves, obviously, you're at Real, and seeing, one of the faces, but then also one of the best leaders in the industry, kind of reposition, from the day to day to where they're at. When you start to see changes within organizations, things like that, I mean, what do you start to think? What do you start to kind of look at and see what's going on?
You see a lot of buyouts and a lot of mergers and things like that. And then, within our organization, you mentioned Sharon moved into the board of directors versus the president. From a Sharon perspective, I don't think I've ever seen a leader that impactful in a president's role in a company since I've been in real estate.
Yeah.
And so obviously for us that were a beneficiary of that, man, it's, that
Yeah.
hits, and I'm fortunate to be able to talk to him one-on-one, once or twice a month. And definitely understand. And I think they're working on some bigger fish. And I don't know we don't talk enough for him to tell me what the bigger fish is. But I think you're seeing a lot of merging and a lot of that. And I think you're going to see the agent counts go down in some of those things. And I think it goes back to you're going to, with technology, with cloud brokerages, with all these things, you're going to see the agents that can move fast, understand technology, understand how to use resources like AI and all these other things to make their business go faster. Those are your top, 20% that are going to do well. And I think the bottom end of the agents, is going to be tough to sustain. And so I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these company mergers and things like that either, because they're feeling that pain on the top end. So you see like your Keller Williams and your Remaxes that have got a lot of money invested in brick and mortar. And then they're competing against folks that don't. So there's going to be a lot of moves in real estate, I think. But I think the main thing for me is just stay focused on knowledge, scalability, and systems and processes that make me go faster than the next guys is where I keep it. Because all these brokerages now have got all the technology, man. It's just a matter of, who's the leadership, and do you think that they can take you where you want to go? So,
yeah, it's really interesting. It's interesting too that you said with the AI emergence. I was, like any of us marketers, just plugged into all the newsletters, just get bombarded, in our inbox with all kinds of stuff. And there's an OG get his newsletter, and he had one that was kind of talking about him just stepping back out of his community that he has of business owners, and just what he's observing. And he took us back a little bit, and he said, 2016 was all about, get a funnel, throw some ads, you're gonna make some money. And then you get into 20, and it was all about that. It was all about creating reoccurring revenue, building it up, and selling. And what he's seeing now is a shift back to the organizations that are led with human resources paired with AI. That's the direction. He said that's the trend that he's seeing everywhere, is that these companies that are human driven, right? It's not about creating a SaaS model. It's not just about throwing a funnel up with whatever, God knows what, that you want to peddle and sell. But now it's really human resource, companies driven by actual humans and human services paired with AI that are really starting to see it. And, even the late adopters or whatever, right? Just being able to leverage, Chat GPT, Grok, just using it on a day in and day out basis. I mean, even having getting my daughter to get in on board with the company. And I'm like, take your script, I want you to go role play with ChatGPT. Just open up the audio, start talking what you want to do. Had Kenny Fast on a couple weeks ago, and he's like, we make every one of our agents, they have resources that they have to check out, and they better have checked it through GPT before they come to leadership with a question.
Yeah.
Like that's,
yeah.
that's it.
And it's a consolidation. Number one, it's a consolidation of agents, the ones that are willing to take advantage of that technology to make their car go faster. And then they're just going to outrun somebody else everybody else by so far. There's, like I said, it won't be sustainable. There's not catch up. But I think the other caveat to it that is going to squeeze our industry is the consumer's access to. They have the same access to AI. AI gives pretty good data. And so while you can't replace a real estate agent, there's a lot of things that you can't. There's a lot of things you can. So if you're one of those agents that doesn't have the skill beyond the replaceable, those are the ones that are in trouble. And so I think it's a lot of consumer access to information that gives them more information than they would get on just a standard Google search where they don't know how to dive deep. That's going to help too. So it eliminates a lot of those needs unless you can communicate at a really, really high level and articulate at a high level what else you do beyond that really, gives them an unfair advantage. So
it's an interesting point, Gene. It's something I was thinking about is, we're talking about us in our industry and how we're using it to be better and go faster. How are you thinking about, or even you thinking about how the consumer is utilizing ChatGPT in their home buying and home selling search prior to they even having a conversation with us?
Yeah, I mean that they can search now. It's the term Grok it versus Google it is starting to become a thing. But man, you can ask Grok, tell me what houses are for sale, tell me where they're trending, tell me what the market looks like, tell me what I can expect over the next 3 months based on data. Anything you want, as just like you said with the interview conversation, because you said just have a conversation with them. It's just like the consumer having a conversation with an agent. Most likely, if it's one of the bottom, 20%, they're having a better conversation than they would have with the agent. So it's that's a big deal.
So how are you so knowing your wealth of knowledge and understanding of the industry, of how the money moves, how real estate is actually transacted and done, where do you have to focus now, because you're going to be entering into the buyer and seller's conversation where they're way more educated than ever before? How do you still maintain your value at that point? Like, how do you not be like, this dude's out, like, I know more than he does. Grok knows more than he does. So like, where do you now enter the conversation for them to be able to help them get the transaction across the finish line?
Usually strategy. One thing AI is not going to do is they'll give you market specifics and things like that, but not necessarily strategy of how to do this in this situation or what your situations are for sidestepping the tax man or in the mortgage world. I look at a loan and I go, well, you're approved up to this dollar amount, but if I can negotiate this amount for you into the contract, then I can approve you to this dollar amount. Because I'm doing both sides, I understand there's a level of communication to where I understand every nuance and can customize just about anything for you. So I think it goes into number one, being able to communicate strategies based on their situation as far as whatever the situation is, whether it's saving tax dollars, getting into the right house, all those type things that AI is pretty limited in. I think that's going to be your biggest hit. And I don't think, every house is unique. And I think I've realized that in the mortgage piece of it is, I think there's a missing gap between agents and mortgage people unless you're so tight with your mortgage person and you're talking at such a high level, because there's a level of customization that I can do now that I'm negotiating the contract and writing the mortgage that always ends up being a better deal for the client, not just talking about rates, but structure and everything else depending on their needs. And I think that flows into just what you said from the AI side. Every house is going to have a unique identifier to it, so to speak, whether it be, size, shape, those type things, lot size, all those different things. And in addition to that, situations in the house that require timelines, that require big decisions, all those things. So if you lean more on the strategy and the navigation versus just the statistical evidence, I think that's where you'll set yourself apart.
I love that. Yeah. In even more important now than ever. I mean, we had to build CHBA because we had CHSA, and CHBA is about the home buying strategy. And it's all about that. And I think that's so important now. And I think that's where you get into kind of the goal of the goal. Like, what is the goal? Is that really the goal? Like, what is it that's super important about what, your decision to sell or your decision to buy? What is it? What is it really? And I think a lot of agents don't know how to dive really deep to have that conversation. And it to me, it's so important. I'm reading, this will be a good one. You'd like this one. It's Dan Heath, Chip and Dan Heath, but this one's just Dan. And did you ever read Switch? Chip and Dan Heath, they had the book Switch. It was a green book. Anyway, it came out a while back, but this one, it's called Reset, and it's just Dan Heath Reset. And it's talking about, a couple things in there, like, even the first chapter is, things are in struggle. You want to do anything with the company, you get back on the front lines, right? You get back close to the customer and how the work is really done. But he had a point in there that he was talking about the goal of the goal. What's the goal of the goal, right? They say, well, what's the goal? But what's really the goal? Getting down to, the layers deeper down to really what it is. And the example he gave was like, there was this mother that wanted to get more fit to spend because she wanted to spend more time with her kids. So she thought she had to get more fit. And I think she was battling cancer. She's doing some things to where if she was to go get more fit, right? And it's not saying that she shouldn't put those things in, but she needs to go spend more time. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to spend more time with her kids because she was battling illness. She just wants as much time with them as possible. And she thought she had to get more fit for that to be true. And if she would have done that, she would have spent less time with her kids because she would have spent more time trying to get more fit. And so it was all about spending more time with the kids, no matter what was happening. So like when she was sick and throwing up or whatever, they're playing board games, right? So she goes, I can throw up in a bucket and still play board games with my kids. And so really understanding what is the real goal. And I think, for agents, it goes back to being just a true expert, that true expert advisor, being able to listen to what they're trying to accomplish, what they're really trying to accomplish, and then being able to advise them, based upon that. But with like what you said, what's the game plan? What's the strategy? And then let's go execute it. And let me be here to execute it with you, because Grok's not going to execute for you.
That's the cool thing is just like we're all wonderfully and uniquely made. So is every real estate transaction, and that's one thing you can't AI. And even in that in person, while my goal is to scale virtual and go into Tampa, go into Miami as a team and do that virtual, I won't have one initial coaching goal session not in person. And I've watched, and statistically, if I do, there's a good chance that the fall off is bigger because there's still that personal connection that's made. I call it vibing. And vibing's a big thing for me, but you can't really do that. And if you've got a relationship that's already there, then you can vibe on Zoom or whatever. But if you're really trying to establish some things and really trying to read each other's feelings, read each other's thoughts, go layers deep like you're talking about, you can't do that not sitting in front of somebody, not as effectively as any other way. I don't see it. And I think if you're big on relationships in real estate, you're going to win no matter what technology is out there. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things that won't change. It was really good question, right? To be thinking about. It came from the Bezos question, right? He'd always say, you guys ask me what's going to change, and that's not the right question. The question you should be asking me is what's not going to change. And deepening of relationships, the local knowledge and expertise, that stuff's not going to change.
Yep.
Yeah. Brother, always appreciate it vibing with you.
Yeah.
And always love catching up, and appreciate you jumping in here, adding a ton of value and how to navigate, the current season that we're all in.
Man, I appreciate you sticking with me for so many seasons. There's a guitar right back there that's got a brown stripe on it. You
Uh-huh.
sent that to me in 2021. It's even actually got a team name that's different than my current team name. But we've been through several seasons together,
We've been
man. I
through some
can't thank you
seasons.
enough.
Yeah, we've been through some seasons. Brother, I appreciate you.
All right.
And keep rocking.
See you, bro.
See you.